My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life.
Dan, you recently had an interesting meeting with a nurse who has gotten involved with some real estate. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, she came to us. She's divorced. She's in her later 50s, and she really is not very happy at work any longer and wanted to talk more specifically about how do I retire? And of course, that's a pretty typical meeting for us. That's not unusual at all. And in her case, as we work through, some of the preliminary discussion, she was very afraid of running out of money. She had been through a bad divorce. It devastated her financially. It affected her almost like a trauma as far as her thought process. And so, what she had done is she had very diligently saved, but the only thing she knew was how to do real estate. So, she didn't really invest a lot outside of real estate. And she had four different houses. She was renting them out. They're all cash flowing as far as paying for themselves, but they're not giving her any net cash flow. Well, retirement's a cash flow puzzle. And that means that, whatever I need coming in the door to be able to maintain quality of life, I then align my resources in order to produce that income. If they're not producing that income, I've got a lot of problems. And in her case, she had a lot of assets, but she was basically house poor. And she was accumulating more assets, more assets, more assets, but she had no income. So she was having to work a lot in order to be able to maintain that process. She was burning out, and it was causing a classic planning issue where her resources were not aligned with her quality of life.
Now, when you spoke to her, had she ever considered relinquishing any of those properties to try to free up some cash flow? Is that anything she considered before coming in to meet with us?
So not only had she not considered that, her intent was to get more properties.
Oh, wow.
And because that's what she knew. And
Mhm.
so when I started to talk in terms of retirement being a cash flow puzzle and starting to show her that, one of the things she wanted to do was potentially leave her employer where it was very stressful, do a much less stressful nursing type of role and maybe fewer hours. Well, when I showed her that that just means a reduction in her income and she has to figure out a way to change that, I said, what if you used like sell one property, pay off the other property? Now the rent from that property is going to be net cash flow to you, or at least some of that rent. And that allows you to be able to make a choice that aligns better with what you want from a quality of life perspective. And to her, that was almost like an earth shattering type of perspective. And we commonly see this things that, because we're an outside objective observer, we are able to give her perspective that she's not going to see on her own because she's kind of embedded in her all of her decisions.
Mhm.
And her idea was you just have more and more and more. And somehow that will ultimately pay off, which it would pay off for her kids
Mm.
because someday she's going to die with that real estate. It maybe struggled to pay for itself over all that time, but it was accumulating equity, and then she dies and it goes to her kids. Well, that was not her goal at all. So by just realigning some things and talking about that, it really opened the door to the possibility of, if I make a decision to sell one or maybe two properties, I can now over here make a decision to change my work situation and make my life fundamentally better.
Yeah, when you bring this topic up, I think about all the noise that is out there regarding real estate and how, there are people that say real estate is the only way to build wealth. the only true way to build wealth out there. And sometimes it paints this picture that is a bit deceptive because you're presented with all the beautiful aspects of it, and then you don't think about all that it takes to maintain real estate and to be able to preserve this real estate portfolio. So I think that is something that maybe she perhaps got caught up in. Maybe she got caught up in all of that noise. When it comes to saving for retirement versus real estate, would you advise to utilize your retirement plan first before getting into anything like that? Because in this situation, we see the dangers of that.
Well, it's the classic question where it's different for everybody, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I've seen many people who are very successful in real estate, but real estate, in order to enhance your wealth, really requires leverage. And
Mhm.
leverage means I have to borrow, use other people's money in order to buy the real estate, use the rent to then pay off the mortgage. And then ultimately, if people get caught up in the tax aspect, because there's a variety of things you can do with taxes in order to make that work. So now they'll say, well, okay, even if I've paid off a property over the years, now in order to access that equity without taxes, I need to borrow it. Because if I
Mm.
sell it, I might have capital gains. I might have depreciated that property and now I might owe a lot in taxes. And of course, nobody wants to pay taxes. So then
Mhm.
all the videos or the tax professionals that are out there, they're going to talk about, well, you don't want to pay those taxes. So then you borrow again. Well, when you're borrowing all the time, that requires cash flow. And you get caught up in this whole process of you're always on this treadmill, you're chasing your tail, and you're always behind from a cash flow perspective. So, again, this is another example where you don't let taxes drive your decision making as the primary motivator. It might be a secondary motivator, but it's really your quality of life that should be driving all those decisions. And in her case, she needed to get off of that real estate treadmill, use some of the equity she had worked so hard to accumulate, which she had done
Mhm.
well, and then change, like reposition her resources in order to better align with what brings her quality of life.
Yeah. Well, that is good that she was involved in something where she could actually access the equity to be able to change her situation. I'm glad it wasn't a situation where there was no way out for her. So, after you've given her recommendations, what is the final outcome? Is she planning to go ahead and take your recommendations and do what you advise?
Well, she also had another challenge in that her son was doing real estate as well, and he was going to flip a house. Well, mom had become the bank.
Oh.
So as her son was working on, like remodeling this house that he bought, all of that process, she was funding it. And she didn't know when he was going to sell. So she had a really uncertain, future as far as when he sells, he's going to pay her back with profit. And of
Mhm.
course, depending on how that goes, she may or may not come out of that very well. So she's taking a fair amount of risk there as well. And, she was aware of that. She wasn't going to do it again. But as far as the outcome, she's very worried about being poor in retirement. And then
Mhm.
that it can be a crippling perspective for a lot of people. It's one of the things that an advisor giving you this outside, objective view can maybe start to change that viewpoint, but it takes time. So
Mhm.
the outcome basically was for her to think through, what does she really want to do? She is looking for other jobs actively. If she finds a position that she finds interesting and it kind of fits, we think that'll be a good opportunity for her to then, more carefully consider. But now she knows, hey, this cash flow thing is really driving my decisions. And our hope is she finds herself in a position where she feels better about her overall quality of life.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's important that she has quality of life now and when she retires. So hopefully everything comes into alignment and works itself out. Is there anything else that you want to add about this?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is we showed her that her smallest mortgage on one of her rentals, if she paid that mortgage off, which would require selling another one, okay? But if she paid that mortgage off, it was about a 12% return as far as like the net, rent that would be coming to her from a cash flow perspective.
Mhm.
And so it was a powerful illustration to show her that by paying off a debt, it actually enhanced her cash flow in a very positive way. So she didn't think about it that way, and that realization was important to her.
Yeah, 12% is definitely meaningful when it comes to your cash flow. So I'm glad that you were able to highlight that for her.
And we're
Well,
not talking about a 12% rate of return. A lot of times people get confused by that. It's a 12% cash flow, meaning if I have 170,000 in the bank and then I pay off a $170,000 mortgage and I save the mortgage payment, if I
mhm.
look at that relative saving, in her case, it was a 12% return from a cash flow perspective. And that showed her how easy it would be for her to make a job change based off of that approach.
Yeah, so I hope she goes through with it so that she can get out of the current job and go where she would like to go. Well, thank you for sharing this meeting and these insights. And until next time, have a good one.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.